I'd like to start by acknowledging the one person that I believe was more responsible in my life than any other in guiding me toward being a better person. I'm sure you all remember Thomas. This is called Poetry is His Scripture. Our children, unformed and trusting, serious and certain, gather around his words. They see the elephant that his story paints. The children wonder at the 5 blind men and what they saw. The younger ones don't understand, but they know that Thomas knows. He sends them to their classes under the arch of our song. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Scratching at the panes, rain attends this service. Thomas's face is raw as he tells us of the death of his grandnephew, whose image will always be 4 years old, unfinished and trusting. What might our blind future have seen in that loved child? We are Thomas's tribe and soak in the brine which he has taught so many of us to release. Our need to soothe him is a St. Vitus dance of involuntary movement. Even now, shivering in his emptiness up there at his pulpit, he gives us poetry and courage. Thomas took the blind men out of my life and hers and theirs. Thomas is our center who needs centering. Poetry and song will be our scriptures, and they are the way we will minister to our minister. I came up through the school years very unaware of even the concept of social justice. There were no minority people in the school that I attended up through high school. And in college, I was cloistered amongst other athletes and folks who were busy having a good time. So it wasn't until I pretty much in graduate school when I, for a short time, was roommates with a man by the name of Dwayne Yadam, who is half Irish and half American native. And I started to get a glimmer of where all this stuff was coming from. And the next 2 things are ones that I wrote for Dwayne. This is called Gift. Grandfather said these blankets would save us. He is dead, spotted and dead. All who cringed under the leavings of the blue coats are dead. Death crept from the dreams of the blue coats into those rags and waited for us. No good spirit can weave itself into my death poem. I die alone, spotted and alone. On a somewhat more upbeat note, a swifter stream for Dwayne. This glacier moves ancient bones closer to the sea. The white teeth of your ancestors flash to the sunlight of their return. Ravens rise out of your words. Their wingtips span the Hohaddon's feelings. Your poems rage out of the green hills and forage with the green bear, gray-brown bear, seeking always a swifter stream, the greatest Chinook. Like Chief Self, they storm into the white man's print. You are the changer. I would walk with you, but my boots are not moccasins. Their marks leave a loud trail. Someday, I might see what you see. when my eyes can hold what the sun says to leaves. And we will speak the language of these mountains, these streams, and these cawing leaves. As time moved on, I got married, started having kids, started kind of looking around at what was going on around me, a little more than I had when I was younger. And this happened one day. I'm sure you've been here. It's called waiting at the Port Townsend Ferry dock. The kid in the pickup ahead of me holds a saltine out his window. A pigeon sits on his wrist leather, pecking at the cracker. The back of his truck says, American by birth, biker by choice. And driver has only $20 worth of ammunition. The youngster smiles back at me from his side view mirror. Who is this gun-toting, bike-riding St. Francis? As he tries to pet the bird's breast, it flutters off. He drops his cracker to the crowd, which is vibrating the tarmac for crumbs. On my lap, the Seattle Post-Intelligencer declares that 9,500 miles from here, gray people are pecking through the alleys of Baghdad for anything they can hustle away to their pigeonholes. The PI claims that those Klansmen are ready to sit on leather wrists for a peck at some random bit of food or revenge. Where do I sit? St. Francis has another cracker in his hand. A splat on his windshield says that he has been punished for his kindness. And time kept moving along, and I got here to Shoreline, and I met the person for whom I wrote this, a very special person that I call Dove, and this poem kind of says where we were at that time. It's called Second Sight. A misguided missile falls on Afghani children. We watch the Taliban's tapes of shattered pieces. Tiny arms reach from piles of masonry. For decades, dark, empty eyes, mirroring chaos, lived for mid-Americans only on our TV screens in our calm, clean living rooms. American days were Kodak moments that existed without negatives. We kept our negatives in Vietnam, Bosnia, and Iraq until September 11th. Until then, we took our chaos in measured amounts. 120 minutes of Clint Eastwood, 600 pages of Tom Clancy. Leave the movie, close the book, order prevailed. But souls on black ice, angry postmen, and terrorists with box cutters are disorders which could intrude upon any quiet moment that suddenly blasts our children in their schools, or executes you and me as we wait in line with our Christmas packages, or hurls grandma and grandpa screaming into the side of a tower. Our veins hold in chaos that one day might spew onto jagged glass, or perhaps our juices will dance crazily with seductive viruses curled into our cells. We know even in our happiest moments that our blood will one day become molecules which scatter around this surging cosmos on katabatic winds. Yet, though chaos continues to blow its fire through our lives, We can find the living whose voices rise from the bedlam of bricks and cement like guiding missiles. My dearest dove, let's roll. And then this happened to all of us. And we all had to grow up quite a bit to make up for it. This has a real long title. I call it a Jim Mitsui title. Jim Mitsui is a very fine Northwest poet. I taught a couple of his children at Ballard High. Jim often had titles that were longer than his poems. So this is a Jim Mitsui title. An open letter to George Bush. Re, an explanation of very simple concepts that seem to have escaped your notice because none of your keepers have allowed you to be aware that the little people constitute over 95% of the world's population. End of title. Dear George, this is the little people writing to say, please don't send us any more bombs. Your bombs make gorgeous flowers, but they're so short-lived and everything around them wilts. We have no room to plant them in any of our deserts, and our supply of arms and legs is so limited. How ironic that you share your name with greatness. No, not your father, our country's. His bombs brought us freedom, while yours blew it away. George, we know you're doing your best to make them bigger and smarter, but we need dumb bombs that don't go off, and smart leaders that don't go off. We little people think small. Please, George, send us Roman candles and colored sparklers. Send your damn bombs to the sun and let us keep our sons and daughters. And just in case you didn't get the message, I wrote him another Jim Mitsui poem. An open letter to George Bush, re your propensity to make decisions which have no regard for the needs of the little people or for any reality which is discernible. End of title. Dear George, it's the little people again. We are concerned about the enormous size of your balls. Since their slight enlargement during your governorship, when your bad decisions affected only a few of us, we are becoming more and more anxious for you. As your granite mine pops out stone after sinking stone, and your stones increase the size of your codpiece. We don't want you to become like the poor man with elephantiasis, whose balls, after several bad decisions, rest in a wheelbarrow he must push before him. Let us recount some of the decisions that have led to this unprecedented testicular growth of yours. Alberto Gonzalez said that America does not have to follow the Geneva Convention, so you put him in charge of the Justice Department. John Bolton said he had no respect for the UN, so you nominated him to be UN ambassador. You chose what's-her-name for the Supreme Court and stuck by her far too long, in spite of the overwhelming evidence of nepotism. Let's not even talk about Paul Wolfowitz or Iraq. George, no one questions the fact that what you do takes balls. But please, for your own sake as well as ours, just stop making decisions. Because if your balls maintain their present rate of growth, by the time that Anton Scalia becomes Chief Justice, they just might be visible from our space station. Okay, I'm going to leave George alone now. If we look at what's going on around us, some of the small things are really examples of the really big things. And I guess that's what this is trying to say. Saturday night at the Barnes and Noble Starbucks coffee shop. He is the old guard of the nouveau riche of the Western wheat set. Sparse, white hairs picket his red scalp, protesting time and the 60-year working life. A copy of Limbaugh's new hardback trembles in his huge blue-veined hand. He draws a watery red, white, and blue bead on a youngster's purple hair and face studs. Flabby lips mash like rotten cherries to splutter his verbiage against an indifference he cannot fathom. With the 4 horsemen, he rides shouting into a box canyon. His mid-aged trophy wife gently guides him out the revolving door. As you know, I live in Arizona now, and we have an awful lot going on down there that is very hard to deal with on a social justice level. Our congregation has been extremely busy helping people as much as it can. That although we are in North Central, we're not near the border, we still have a lot of folks up there who need our help. And excuse me a moment. Here we are. This is called Eddie, Stranger in a Cold Land. Eddie, ¿cómo se dice the best eggs in town? Las mejores huevos en la ciudad. He smiled. Short, stocky, brown. He wore a yellow Yankees cap. Yellow? And a black and white striped Yankees shirt. The Yankees logo was mostly hidden behind a Prescott pantry apron, which hung to his ankles. The ensemble was complete with white socks and black high-top kids. Do you cook like this for your family? Eddie just kept smiling, placed my plate in front of me, and walked back to the kitchen. Does he have a family? Are they here in Prescott? Does he send them money in Mexico? Will I ever learn to shut up? I haven't used my high school Spanish since Acapulco in 1966. There, for 3 days, I was 3 doors down the hall from the nearest bathroom in a $3 hotel, running back and forth, celebrating Moctezuma's revenge. When I was well enough to visit a pharmacy, I pointed to my belly and tried to say, "pain in my stomach," in Spanish. The tall, distinguished druggist said in English, "I do not sell the watermelons here." If he had more money, more education, Eddie the cook could be Eduardo the chef. Maybe he really is Eduardo the chef, but slinging hash will not get him into Club Cordon Bleu. This morning, Eddie wasn't in his usual spot. Derek, his manager, said police stopped him for not having brake lights. He had no green card. Eddie's wife and kids are legal, so Eddie was sent to Mexico alone. A doctor of philosophy was in the crew that repaired my drip system. My nephew's nanny is a college grad. Don't believe that old adage. The meek will inherit nothing. I had in years past a couple of students who belonged to minorities, and each of them on different occasions came to my class in tears because some other teacher had done something to hurt them. I won't go into that necessarily, but just the fact that because they were minorities, they were not counted for as they should have been. Oh, this is called Flounders for Tamar and Anne. You break into my class crying so suddenly I almost touch. But to hug you, to be human here in the classroom would put me in deep water. In this scholastic aquarium, the octopus of parental concern presses my arms to my sides. At Camp Manuka in last summer's Oregon, for a while, I got around what makes a teacher neuter. We used intensive care, Johnson's baby oil, anything to make our bodies slick. Dan Silva massaged my left foot. Judy Anderson worked on the right. I floated like a walrus in sun drench, my feet loose as flippers. But always, the sharks are twitching through their medium. Sensors, keen, gill slits pumping water for the tingle of blood. I must tread this water lightly, touch nothing sharp. Other dangerous fish bubble against our glass, magnify their eyes like involved spinsters. And here you stand, cold as when you came in my room. My words are flounders, flat, stupid. They ooze out, trickle upward. I think there's no surface. And I need to talk a little bit about what's happening to kids who can't really defend themselves. This is called Seattle Substitute. I wrote just not too long ago. These girls who refuse to see me, who continue to talk to each other during class, though I stand in the aisle between them, are playing out the masses' way of speaking as though the servants did not exist. The girls are getting even with Whitey. I am not a person. I am an icon. Here for a day or two, then I move on to take my place on the verbal shooting range at another school. Honky asshole, motherfucker, are splattered in the dim hallways. So many of these kids go home to broken homes, then return to school in the sure knowledge that sometime this year a schoolmate will catch a drive-by bullet. Certainly, no words of mine are important to young women whose great decisions will be to work at McDonald's or clean houses. I want to give them better choices, but their hatred stuns me as I face these same passive resistors and their angry brothers in class after class. I cannot settle for being these kids' day off, but I am handcuffed by the very administrators who want me to educate them. One young lady who had ignored me best returned from the office with this note, quote, "Substitutes are not to send students to the office. If you feel physically threatened, call security," unquote. It didn't matter that I didn't have the security number. The phone did not work. I don't know how to help them hear anyone's poetry. I have seen their blood when I was coaching. Mine is the same color, and I am not the enemy. Am I? And this leads us up practically to present, and something that a lot of people from my congregation attended and took part in last summer at GA in Phoenix. I hope a lot of you were there. If you were, you will recognize some of what I have to say here in the second half of this. This is called camp. You had to be 8 to go to the YMCA camp. But I was a tower for my age, and my parents totally needed some them time. So, in the 10th month of my 6th year, I was shepherded to Camp Seymour, 2 hours west of Seattle, for a desolate week of my life. That summer, I started to load on lard. The food groups at Seymour in the late 40s were macaroni and beans. And we guzzled gallons of Kiski's drink, which was fraught with sugar. Aside from the sugar highs, the only reliably interesting part of camp was our counselor, Joe Gambino. Joe wore just his jockstrap to Seymour's early morning dippy. Never having imagined one before, I was advised that it was a French bathing suit. He would free fall from Lifeguard's Tower into Orca Bay's salty ice water. Joe did heaps of heroic things, was every camper's idol. In the 10th month of my 69th year, I am blessed not to be one of those herded into Sheriff Joe Arpaio's illegal immigrant concentration camp, where the emaciated inmates would be grateful to have Kiskis with their meager doles of macaroni or beans. As far as we know, no one in Tent City has been abused in a medical experiment, but other Nazi-like depredations are repeated there often on young men who have been hogtied and then kneed, punched, and kicked into unconsciousness and even death. In this 10th month of my 69th year, I am pressed among 3,000 UUs and their friends facing Arizona's Maricopa County Jail. Our arms offered in a 3,000 candle power salute, while we iPod this standing on the side of love across our earth. We believe that human beings should not be made to wear pink socks and underwear. We believe that human beings should not be called stupid wetbacks or Mexican bitches. We believe that human beings should not be denied water on desert days in the hundreds, beaten senseless or raped by guards. We believe in the worth and dignity of almost every human being. We believe in good sense and a sense of humor, that French bathing suits trump pink underwear, and that good Joes really do outnumber the bad Joes.